Here are my top 10 easiest players to trade for in MLB the Show 22. Number 1 is Jared Walsh. Jared Walsh is a player that you're trying to look for if you just need someone who will hit over 20 home runs. Personally, I've used him in several rebuilds, and he's always easy to get and always useful for my team. And as you can see on a lot of people on this list, it does still take a lot to get him, but it's not as much as it would take to get a 90 plus, and for the value he has, is definitely worth it. I know he's not an Ohtani, he's not a Trout, but out of all players on the Angels except Taylor Ward, he is one of the more underrated players on that team. And with just a few players from any team you select to rebuild for, he will be relatively easy to get for your team. And coming in at number 2, literally any prospect.
Too easy! No. That shit is too easy. Too easy. No. That shit is too easy.
In MLB the Show, they make it so easy for you to be able to get the top prospects. So I'm showing you right now is Adley Rutschman, who is currently the top prospect for the Orioles. And when I mean any prospect, I mean any prospect. MLB the Show shows no love to the prospects, even though they have such high potential. In just about a few seconds, you'll be able to see that I was able to get Adley Rutschman, and you can too, for your team. Him, Bollywood Jr., Julio Rodriguez, and I can name many others like O'Neal Cruz and stuff like that. You can get those guys relatively easy with just a few good players. And a lot of times if you're doing a 3-year or more rebuild, these guys end up becoming 85 overall or more. So you're definitely getting value out of it. Not right away, but it will come eventually, and you'll eventually pay off. And with just a few prospects from any team, you're able to get people like Adley Rutschman, who might not make an immediate impact, like I've said, but will make one in the future. Next up, Rafael Devers. Honestly, it shouldn't be this easy to get Rafael Devers. Any rebuild I've done with Rafael Devers, he always hits 30 plus or more. He always gets his career high. And with Devers, it always only takes at least one good piece and just a few random young prospects to get him. And with him being 25, he'll be like how he is in your first season with him, the entire rebuild. Next up is Javier Baez. I was debating whether or not to put him on this list because he is kind of a hit or miss. But with the stats he puts up, it is always good to add him to your team. And with his massive contract, it doesn't necessarily look like it would be worth it. But I am here to tell you that is just not the case. For how easy he is to get, and the production he puts up, he would be someone that you would definitely want to put on your team. Next up, Jazz Chisholm. Jazz Chisholm is going to be one of those players on this list that is just bound to break out. So if you're going to put him on your team, he is bound to go crazy. He's younger than 24. He hits usually 10 to 20 plus homers in each rebuild I've done, and he's always been a solid player. And, with him being so easy to get, for an 82 overall, he's definitely someone you want to put on your team, just with his A potential and him just being so young, like I've mentioned. And with just a couple prospects and a good player, you'll definitely be able to get him. Now, let's talk about some pitching. Frankie Montas. For me, at least, he always hovers around about a 3 to a 4 ERA. And that is someone you definitely want in your first season, just to start out. And without a doubt, he's definitely one of the easiest pitchers to get, and he'll probably be the easiest pitcher you'll see put on this list. in a matter of seconds. It is so easy to get Frankie Montas on your team, and it will definitely be beneficial in the long run. Now, let's talk about Brian Hayes. Personally, he is really a toss-up, but overall, he does get higher. He's usually a 90 within 3 years, so that is just good for anybody. And with little value that you have to give up for him, he is definitely still a good piece to add to your team. That is why I highly recommend that you get him just off that. And, with already Devers being on this list, he would definitely, if you're not able to get Devers, is definitely a good second option that you can lean back on. And with him being easier to trade for than Rafael Devers, he would definitely be able to get with lower value. And still will make an immediate impact. Now, Tyler Glasnow, our second pitcher on this list. In my opinion, compared to Frankie, he would definitely be the better option out of those two. He is, keep in mind, difficult to trade for. Just solely based on the fact that he is an 87 and he's one of the better pitchers on the Rays. And with him being 28, he is going to regress relatively earlier than most players on this list, but he will definitely be a short-term pitcher that can be on your team. And from experience, he's always been a solid player in my rotation, and definitely would be a solid one in yours. And next up, let's talk about a bullpen guy for your team, and that is Garrett Whitlock. Garrett Whitlock is a relatively young closer that will definitely increase his overall over time, and he's easy to get. And with him being a closer, his value is a little lower just off that, so it would definitely be easier to trade for him, and that's why he's on this list. So if you're looking for a catcher to trade for, or a closer to trade for, he is your guy. Next up, Cedric Mullins. I know everyone was probably waiting for this one, and it's kind of an obvious one. Cedric Mullins always just bullies people. He always has over 20 home runs, so he's definitely a good person to add to your team. He's kind of in the same ballpark as Rafael Devers. That's why I like to trade for both of those guys, because they're both have star symbols and they are also easy to get, because they are just so undervalued. The only difference between those two is that Cedric Mullins is 2 years older. Unless you're actually doing a long rebuild, that won't matter for the short term, but it would only affect the long term. But like Devers, he will definitely make an immediate impact on your team and is definitely worth trading for. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, in the comments section, just tell me who is the easiest player to trade for that I didn't mention. And I'll see you guys next time.